You're watching Capitol Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. We are now joined by the other candidate in the race for the Illinois 13th Congressional District, Regan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me and giving me an opportunity to speak to your viewers.
You're welcome. We are now about a little over a month after the primary, a very, very close race that you won between you and Jesse Rising. Just coming out of the primary now, heading into the general election, what were your thoughts about how that race went, and what are your thoughts now moving forward?
Well, it was a great primary race, and I'm really proud of the Republican nominees that stuck to the issues and tried to indicate to voters why they were the best choice to be the representative for the 13th Congressional District. Coming out as the nominee, I have earned the full support and endorsement of my three fellow runners, so that has been really exciting as we all look towards November and making sure that we have an elected representative for the people. So shifting gears now towards the general election, we have a lot more voters to get in front of. We're looking to run a consistently solid campaign, a serious campaign as far as voter contact and talking to key stakeholders throughout the district, a variety of industries, and just making sure that we reach people that might not be traditional voters or that are looking for a place to be included in the democratic process and would like to elect me.
So that is important when we're talking about this new 13th district, that the 13th before, when Rodney Davis chaired that district, was always said to be drawn for a Democrat, but Rodney Davis would always win it. Now we have even tighter boundaries around all of the cities. It seems to be even more drawn for a Democrat. Why is that? How do you combat that? How do you combat the districting side of this and try to get more voters out in that way?
Well, surely that's a frustrating process for all parties, knowing that we do have a very gerrymandered and a very specific district. Of course, it is leaning Democrat at this point, but I do think that most people in the 13th Congressional District, especially those that I've been talking to along the campaign trail, have a lot of those same common issues. You know, we're looking for growing economies. We're looking to feel safe in our neighborhoods. We want to be able to afford gas and groceries as hot topics right now. And so I think that my ability to go out and meet the people where they are and just be a great listener and know that I will advocate for them in Washington is our primary goal.
How do you go about doing that, specifically in terms of inflation, all of the main issues facing the people at home right now? What's your plan if you were to get to Washington?
Well, sure. American families are hurting on a lot of fronts right now, small businesses as well, and various industries. So I think the primary goal in trying to provide some relief for our American families starts with stopping the reckless spending that's happening in Washington right now. We came out of COVID, we had a lot of dollars put into the economy, and I think we're seeing some of that backfiring now with record high inflation and prices at the pump and prices at the grocery store. And so I think we have to start there. We need to talk about bringing American energy independence back. I'd like to see Congress be more forward thinking. We seem very reactionary right now, although I will have to say I don't think this administration is really putting out a plan for relief. They're changing definitions and trying to do workarounds, and the American people, I think, can see through that. So as the next Congresswoman, I want to be able to focus on issues that they're prioritizing and looking at good policy and good legislation that is going to work for all of us.
You said they're being reactionary right now. You want to be forward-looking. How does that work? I mean, does that take more long-term planning? Because right now there are some conversations about we're in this right now. It could last a little bit longer, but we do need to build to lessen these effects of gas prices or prices at the grocery store.
Sure, I think we need to be kind of all in on providing immediate relief, looking for ways that we can adjust policy, we can maybe make some temporary shifts, but we do need to think long term. We have a lot of government overreach and a lot of government spending that seems to be misaligned with what our American people want and what we want to see for a future America that's strong. So I do think we need to obviously come to the table and talk about ways that we can provide some immediate relief for our families, but we do need to think long term, make sure we're bringing together the right people to have those conversations and really challenge them to work for the American people every single day.
Gun control is a huge debate right now, especially after earlier this month there was the mass shooting in Highland Park. I talked with you about gun control last time that you were on this show, but did the events in Highland Park and the way that the debate has really evolved over this past month. What are your stances? Where are you at in terms of an assault rifle ban, for instance?
Sure. So incidents like those in Highland Park are devastating to all of us. It feels very close to home here in Illinois. I know those families were just going out to have a great time at a parade and found themselves victims. And I think that the conversation needs to continue to be elevated. I applaud Congress for thinking about bipartisan solutions and talking about real issues and how we can prevent tragedies like this happening again. But the bottom line is victims aren't paying attention to gun control legislation. I mean, Highland Park is an example of where they did have an assault rifle ban in their town, and it didn't matter. And so I think we need to start focusing on gun safety and education. We need to talk about mental health. We need to talk about school safety. Uvalde was a definite tragedy as well, and all of us are hurting, and we do want to know how we can avoid, avoid incidences like this in the future, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
So the more gun restrictions is not the way that you would go about that. You would go with the general, what we've heard, hardening schools and like you said, more gun safety talks?
Yeah, I think that we do have great gun legislation on the books, and it doesn't feel fair to penalize, law-abiding gun owners with further restrictions when they are in fact not those who are carrying out these terrible acts.
The country is also obviously still dealing with the fallout of Roe v. Wade. You're running for a district here in Illinois, one of the only states in the Midwest now that still allows for abortion access without restrictions. Mm-hmm. Going to the federal level, there's been talks of a future. Abortion advocates are warning about the possibility of a national ban. I wonder where you stand on that. Is that something that you feel like Congress should weigh in, or is it with the Supreme Court where they say this is a state decision?
Well, I absolutely agree with the Supreme Court returning the state decision on this issue. I think the overturning of the Dobbs decision was historic. As a supporter of life, I am glad to see that issue be returned to state legislation where voters, in fact, have the ability to elect officials to best represent them. Having said that, we are here in Illinois, and we have very radical legislation leading to late-term abortion and fully funded taxpayer abortion. And I think that the majority of the country is not going to make that an issue at the ballot box this November, but I do respect the discussions that are being had and the ability to use my voice to continue to advocate to support life at the federal level.
You mentioned at the top of this interview that there were no issues in having the other Republicans that you ran against kind of fall behind you, support you now heading into the general election. But we have seen some fractures start to grow in the Republican Party, both at the state and federal level, when it comes to moderate Republicans, conservative Republicans, Trump Republicans, and more traditional conservative Republicans. Where do you fall on that? Would you call yourself more of a moderate? Would you say you're more conservative? Do you support the former president as he's, continuing his political ventures here and endorsing more candidates?
Well, in my candidacy and focusing on getting elected in November for the people who are in Illinois 13th, I want them to know that I'm a candidate that's going to listen. I think that this election is more about progress and policy and not necessarily personalities. I think that people are frustrated. There is a lot of people that gain from dividing us, and I think we have a lot more in common as it comes to issues such as, being able to have comfortable budgets, having job opportunities, a growing economy. We need to get crime down in our communities. We have people that are feeling the effects of a wide open border. So I want to be a candidate that this year people are looking to elect to be able to represent them, regardless of whether we agree 100% on issues. And it's not so much about personalities, but making progress for all voters in the 13th district.
What are your thoughts on how the January 6th commission hearings have been proceeding?
Well, I haven't been paying much attention, quite honestly. This is a robust campaign trail that I'm on, and it hasn't been something that has been top of mind for voters that I've been talking to in the 13th. I respect Congress's decision to try and get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th. There is a lot of frustration and there's a lot of confusion, and I do think we need to get some answers to be able to prioritize democracy and make voters feel engaged in the process. We want great voter turnout in November. We want to make sure we have free and fair elections and that we count every legal vote. So I think that that's what we're focusing on and sort of engaging voters for November.
Have you been speaking with any of the current office holders, other Republicans, different congressional seats? I know. I know obviously we have Darren LaHood to the north. We have Rodney Davis for another few months here, Mary Miller, Adam Kinzinger. Have you been speaking with any of these Republicans as you hit the campaign trail here?
Well, I think that's important for me as a first-time candidate, is to lean on those incumbents and talk a little bit about what they're hearing and what congressional issues are at the top of mind right now. I'm obviously not elected to Congress yet, but I do want to be able to learn about the process. My goal is to go to Washington and legislate for the people. I think there has been tremendous frustration by voters. Congressional approval rating is probably the lowest it's ever been. And so as someone who has had work experience, I'm a mom first and foremost, so my children are my priority in going to Congress and leaving a good America for them and creating a strong America. But I think that families are looking for elected officials to represent them, to be great listeners, to reach across the aisle when necessary and bring about good policy and good funding. So obviously, knowing I can rely on some of those incumbents is key to me in my election.
You yourself don't have a long history in politics running for this office. Your competitor does. Nikki Budzinski, longtime supporter of labor unions, member of labor unions, former aide to President Biden and Governor Pritzker. How do you go about, competing when you're at such drastically different times in your political career?
Well, you're absolutely right. I didn't go looking for a political career, but like many across Central Illinois and across this country, we're frustrated. And there seems to be a great disconnect between people in Congress and people in the administration working for us. And I know that those same passions that I have and wanting to provide for my family, to support great economies in my community, is what I'm going to take with me to Washington. Having had experience as an educator, as a small business owner, and someone who has advocated for low-income families in my community, those are the issues that I'm going to be focused on when going and reaching out to voters and asking them what their priorities are, and really instilling in them my desire to go and work for the people in Washington. So I'm looking forward to having discussions about what makes us different, what our priorities are, and really letting the American people decide.
Regan Deering, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Cole. It was a pleasure.
We'll be right back.